someone on Facebook suggested that people who are experienced growers make videos to explain how we grow and perhaps keep a journal of how we grow. So that's part of what I'm already doing, and I thought I would go through in this video and talk about how I have my growing area set up. First, it's really very tight in here. My growing area is about 18 feet by 6 feet. It's very hard to get back to see everything, but I have 3 sets of 6-foot shelving. Come across the top shelf here, and it goes down to the ground, and I have my orchids situated on them all the way across the windows. My growing area faces east, and then it has a southern exposure in the winter. And I basically have created miniature zones within my general growing area. I run 2 warm mist humidifiers 24/7 in the winter to try to keep the humidity up. I have an old-fashioned humidity gauge that I use to determine how much humidity I have. So you can see right now I'm about 66 degrees out here and about 55% humidity. I can get a little bit more at night since it gets cooler, the dew point drops, but when the heat's on in the winter, like right now it's about 19 degrees Fahrenheit outside, then it is really hard to keep the humidity high, and 50% is my minimum target, and that requires 2 humidifiers going all the time. Because it's so cold, I use warm mist. And I think the orchids appreciate that. This is only my winter growing area. I don't use this in the summer. The summer everything goes outside and sits underneath a 50% shade cloth. So the different zones. At the top of my shelves, I have my largest plants, and usually they're cattleyas. I grow mostly cattleyas. My database says about 60%, 70% of my collection is cattleyas. So on the top are my standard cattleyas. You can see my Potnara Cheryl Winkleman Chris in bloom back there. It's a December winter bloomer. Sweeping over this way, you can see I have giant Guatemalensis on the top, and then over there, on the other end of the shelf, I have my Romania woolly. It's a Raymond Burr orchid. It's from Sea God Nurseries, when Raymond Burr used to actually hybridize. And I don't know if he did it himself, but it is a plant from that collection. A division of a plant from that collection, and I keep it, even though it's gigantic, mostly as homage to Raymond Burr, who played Perry Mason, and I liked him when I was little. And then in the back here are more standard sized cattleyas. So usually cattleyas are the most light, that's why they're up top to get the most, and then I sort of have them staggered so that the ones that need more light are toward the front. And then the ones that need less light are toward the back. Then on the next shelf down, it's going to be hard to see because I have some mounts hanging in front. I have things that have a lot of nodosa or catasetums that need more light. I have my Encyclia radiata here. It needs a lot of light. It wants to be really wet, and it wants to have lots and lots of light. You can actually see here in the summer where I've given it so much light, it's sunburned. But if you want it to bloom really well, then it needs lots of light. So then here are the catasetums. They're not being watered right now except for this one that says Happy Holidays 2017. That was my freebie from Fred Clark for customer appreciation, and it came still completely green with a new growth coming out. So it's getting lightly misted right now just to keep it going. Not too much because I don't want it to rot. It needs to be bigger, but enough so because it's still actively growing. But you can see like my other ones, they're dormant. They're not getting water. They're just sitting there. This one's going into dormancy. And then I have one, I have a red Clockara After Dark that I got as a seedling, so I don't actually know how it blooms out around the corner, and you can see it's heading into dormancy. So right here at the very front, which needs lots of light, are my vanilla. And they're here because they need a lot of light, and these are the guys who need the 50% humidity. You can see the big fat aerial roots on them. I have a regular vanilla, and I have a variegated vanilla, and if you look at these dried roots there, so that's what happens when you spend too much time under 50% humidity. For vanilla, the arrow roots just dry up. They don't plump back out, they just dry out. So, so this is a variegated vanilla right there. Here is my Ricostylus giganta alba. You can see it doesn't have a lot of leaves. Despite my best efforts, I suspect that it likes to lose its leaves every year. It usually loses 1 or 2 leaves and then puts out 1 or 2 more. And I think the reason it does that is that it's just not humid enough here for it. Because it's got lots of roots. Here's a fat plump one, but it's just not enough. So right up at the front here, I've got a basin. Actually, it's a Rubbermaid like tray with some grit on top of it, and I have ultrasonic fogger down inside here. And so this is stuff that needs highlight and needs to stay moist all the time. So you can see the eclandier that I potted on the cool log is here. I try to top it off frequently. It needs some water, definitely. So, and I have my Dendrobium Wesselii here. You can see there's 2 of them. Both of them like to have high humidity. Their roots don't want to stay particularly wet. They're crawlers, they're twig epiphytes. They want to spread out into the air, but they want high humidity. So they're up here at the front for lots of light, and of course the room itself is humid. So then I have a lot of other stuff that I'm trying to get to bloom with highlight. Let's see if we get a better view. So this is my Dendrobium Jenkinsii. I haven't gotten that to bloom yet. I think it's been getting too dry for it in the winter. You know, Nodosa right here, that's coming out of bloom. It had, I think, 12 blooms in the fall, but you can still see that it's putting out some little blooms. All right, so anyway, some highlight up in the front, and then on the foggers are everything that needs to stay wet. This is stuff that needs like constant moisture. So I pot up in very loose sphagnum moss, and then I have the foggers going, and they just keep everything on them as wet as possible. I have to fill them like every other day. So you can see my Maxillaria tenuifolias on it because it's a very thirsty orchid. Mounts are on foggers. My Neos are on foggers because they want to be watered all the time. So moving back, then as you can tell, as I go farther back, there's less light. So things that want light but not quite as much, Australian dendrobiums, cataleas that aren't standard are farther back. My Asian cymbidiums and cephalium. All right, my Richard Mueller crosses are all bottom. They actually could use more light than this, but I'm running out of room, and I have things tiered so that obviously the biggest orchids are on top, and then the smaller orchids are on the bottom to make enough shelf space. And so unfortunately, even though my Richard Mueller, which have a lot of dosa in them, could use more light, I don't have any high space for them. So they're at the bottom. So then I have Oncidium hybrid crosses, more over here. So these are my really tall ones. This is a very, very tall shelf to accommodate all of them. And then I have a lot of either seedlings or compact Cattleyas down at the bottom. So they all still get light eastern exposure, but it's just not nearly as much as the ones on the southern end of the room. So then I have on the floor the things that matter the least. And the reason for this is that I have 4 cats and they eat orchids. So the stuff on the floor is the stuff that has the lowest value. So I have nobile type dendrobiums in the back here. They definitely could use more light, but I don't have space for them. And you can tell that, so while I have buds, and you can see I have one in bloom on here on my Holy Night, which is facing away. It's a really awesome kind of color. It's deep purple in the middle and then white all around. I don't get that huge clustering of buds that many people get because I don't provide enough light. But they're on the floor. The cats like to eat them. They have nice soft leaves. They get munched all the time. Even if I put things up higher, like I have 2 Asian cymbidiums that didn't fit on the shelf and they're sitting here. If you look here, I have cat damage because they sat on the back of the rocking chair and leaned over and had snack. So on the very bottom, multiples of plants that I'm trying to get to acclimate to semi-hydro. Down here is my Erin Kobayashi Amy Chen seedlings that came out of a community pot. They were really seedlings, not crosses, but I started with 3 and now only 2 and probably 1 more is going to die. I have ones in bark that are doing better. So here's a bulbophyllum. Again, not enough light down here. In the back is a Masdevallia. You can see it has 2 flowers. The Masdevallia is probably getting eaten left and right, but I've run out of shelf space. Right here in the middle right here is more nobile type dendrobiums. These are all extras that I dug out of the trash and potted up. And they're sitting in the middle because I generate enough humidity in this room that it tends to rain a little bit at night and in the early morning because the moisture condenses on a pipe up in the ceiling and it falls down. So actually these guys are sitting in the middle of the room to catch the condensation. So let's see, what else? And then, yeah, I have a whole bunch of plants. Like right down here, you can see that I'm babysitting for the Illinois Orchid Society. So some of these no ID Phalaenopsis belong to them. We give them away to new members. In the front here, which needs a lot of light but is my least valuable stuff, are the reed stem epidendrums that I'm babysitting for the Illinois Orchid Society. And if you look at this one really carefully, you can see one has fallen over. And let's see, you can see right there that all the leaves have been eaten off of that plant on one side, and that would be the cats. They're supposed to be carnivores, but apparently I have herbivores that eat my plants. So that's why, so this is the stuff that has the least value, where they could be sitting on the ground and consumed. And while I don't want them consumed, that's what happens, things that sit on the ground. So if I like you, you sit up top, and if I don't like you, then you get to sit on the bottom where you'll be eaten. So I have other things. Let's see. This is my Cymbidium Tracyannum. It's just too big to go up top. I would put it up if I could. This one suffers from the fact that the cats will bite the flowers off later once it blooms. It's currently spiking. Right here you can see it spike right there. And then I have a whole bunch of, I can't help myself, let's see, there's some orchids here, overflow orchids. know what to do. Here's one of the herbivores that comes and eats my stuff. And they basically go after my lemon tree and my gardenia all the time. So that is how I grow in my space with orchid predators and really cold temperatures. If you can look outside, you can see that it is currently snow on the ground and a very limited amount of space.